I lived on one of the oldest streets in the city. There's a really cool story to every street and building and brick there. When you first come into it, you're like, I don't know what to do. You can't brand yourself if you don't know what you bring to the table and who you are. I'll never say I know everything, but I know a lot. I had a transaction that took 4 months. And I don't just mean it was on the market for that long. Like, it took 4 months from contract to close. All those people who bought during the high are a totally different seller or buyer on their next time around.
What does failure is knowledge mean to you?
Failure is the number one predictor of success.
Welcome to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. And Amy, I just got one question for you.
Yeah.
Why real estate?
Why real estate? Two reasons, actually. I lived in Philadelphia for about 10 or 11 years, and we lived right in Old City. So imagine cobblestone streets, some of the original buildings that were there at the time that the Constitution was being written, like those still exist, and was a few blocks away from the Betsy Ross House, a few blocks away from Independence Hall and where the original White House, was in Philadelphia. So there's a really cool story to every street and building and brick there. And as the city, even while we were there, and actually I was just there last week, even as you see it modernize, you see it kind of take on a new generation and a new life, there's elements of the old that remain. And being able to give a property a story, I think, is incredible. It really made me fall in love with the architecture, why they look the way they do. So that was certainly what kind of fueled the passion behind it. I started just learning things about not only my own property, but where I was. And then upon buying our very first home, we were young, we knew nothing, went into it blind, and we had a terrible experience. We had an agent who actually committed fraud. And I remember after having that happen, I was sitting in the living room of our house, and it's pouring rain. And I just said to myself, I will never go through this again. And I will never let anybody else go through this again. And so it took a lot of just my natural personality, which is to be very like advocate driven, very protective, and melding that with something that became an interest and passion I didn't even really know I had until I lived there. And then all I needed was the right timing and opportunity to open up.
Wow. For when I was doing the research, it did not say that Amy is from Philly, because my wife is from Philly, and
Oh, nice.
I only been there one time, and when we went there, we went to the Rocky Steps, and I had recently saw a video when Rocky was running up the steps, and before the statue, before all the merchandise that's there now. It's like, wait, there's a process that everyone has to go through. And so the fact that you was able to be around Philly and really understand, like, there's something here, there's something that I could potentially find. In reality, you found your passion. In addition to that, you was finding yourself. What was your biggest challenge when it comes to finding yourself and something that you really enjoy doing?
Um,
Kind of
I,
froze. I'm listening.
yeah, I saw that. Okay. I actually was kind of going through an interesting time period around the time that I got into real estate. So I wasn't always in real estate. I was actually in science and pro sports. And I had all the degrees you could ask for. I was in a completely different field, and I loved it, don't get me wrong. But I when I transitioned and when COVID hit and I had to make that next opportunity happen because there were no more sports. We had no idea when the world was going to open back up. That became the timing and opportunity piece. And that's when I had to decide, well, okay, what does real estate have to do with what you used to do before? Because seemingly someone with a degree in neuroscience who used to talk to athletes with concussion syndrome doesn't translate easily as, oh, now you're a realtor. But it's actually been the easiest transition I've ever had. You have to be a good listener. You have to be an advocate, whether it's for that athlete or now for my clients. You have to be detail oriented in the sciences. And I consider myself a contract expert, and I work very hard to know every line and word and scenario inside and out. You have to employ so many skills on the one side of what I was doing that I really found my niche easily and found out what it was that I was good at that would make this work. And so that was the piece of myself that I started to find was, if you're a fighter, if you got a little bit of grit to you, which Philly will definitely instill in you, if you really care about people, it is the easiest thing for you to do to translate that into any job. Doesn't have to be real estate, but the want has to be there.
And I definitely agree. When I started going to college a couple years ago before I joined the Marine Corps, I went for physical therapy because I had torn my ACL and my meniscus. And
Oh,
as you're going through the process of healing, recovering, and they're helping you like actually build your strength back up, your confidence back up, and help you find yourself. When I start going to physical therapy, or when I start going to school for physical therapy or kinesiology, I recognize that I wasn't that good in science. And so that my first year, I was like, I don't know about this, but to understand that you're constantly transitioning, you're constantly growing, you're constantly developing. If you have a thing for people, you mentioned if you have a thing for people, then you'll be okay with in whatever industry you're in. As I was doing research on you, and I watched a couple of videos about it was about a year ago or so. You say that you was inspecting the house before the staging got staged, before the house got staged. And you notice a small detail that a lot of people will often forget. You notice that the tiles was different from one another. That attention to detail doesn't come easy unless you're really paying attention to that. So by you transitioning, was you said it was easy for you. Okay, so as you're transitioning to real estate, there has to be some moment that you was overwhelmed, or that you thought was overwhelming, that you thought that wasn't as easy. What moment was that?
there's a lot of moments. It's a little cavalier to say it was easy because the work part is easy. People are inherently not easy. And the one thing that you always have to work on so much and you'll have the most stumbling blocks in is people. And so, when you're in real estate, I even tell clients this to this day. I said, I'm a little desensitized to certain things. To me, when I see an inspection report, I tell my clients, I don't want to give you what I think. I want you to tell me what you think first, because my impression of it is completely different. And everybody comes with their own set of wants and needs and sensitivities as well. So for me, I know what I'm capable of doing. I know what my husband's capable of doing. So if I go buy a house and there's something, small done, I know that we can fix that. I'm not even worried about it, move on. But there could be somebody else who is completely not sufficient in doing that or not comfortable. And that becomes important to them. So the people side of it is what you have to work on the most and where you're going to have your setbacks and your triumphs. And there's nothing you can do about that. There's no book, there's no manual. You have, again, you got to care. You got to want to support this person through what everybody makes out to be like this, fun TV show experience where it's like, yay, we're having a great time. They don't even show people having to pack, like it is stressful. The lender's calling you 100 times, asking for documents. You're like, why do you need this? Because I do. My job is to take as much off of that as I can and just be that support system. And I've learned in every transaction that means something different of me. And the more experience you get, the better you are at kind of like heading things off before they happen. You learn how to get ahead of it. When you first come into it, you're like, I don't know what to do. Do you need a hug? Like, what can I do?
Yes, and I can tell that you've had a lot of failures because when I started my journey of trying to like become an entrepreneur and try to figure out what I wanted to do when I was in the Marine Corps, I started in real estate wholesaling,
Mm,
and I didn't know that you had to talk to a lot of people. I didn't know you had to follow with a lot of people. I didn't know like the whole process of really sales, marketing, follow up, and then really caring for the people. And what I didn't recognize was that it's not just about the house that you're solving. No, no, no,
No.
no. Everyone that you come encounter with is completely different than the next situation or than the last situation. But to really understand everyone, you have to understand someone, but that someone is yourself first. So how was it understanding more about you and everything that you want to do in the space of real estate? And so that way, when you start with yourself, you can really help others with that.
Yeah, I had to draw from the times when, I mean, our very first house, right? I had to draw from that experience. And I'd say, everything happens for a reason. I would say that God made that happen to us and put me in that position to prepare me for what he had in store for me now, because I had to bring myself back, and I still do. I mean, I've been doing this now for 5 years, which doesn't sound like a long time, but I've done well over 100 transactions at this point. By over 100 of anything that you've done, you change. You've become a little bit better every time. I have to go back to those very first moments where I didn't even read the contract when I first bought a house, and I didn't ask my agent to explain things in it that I now know I should have. I didn't know how to navigate an inspection report. I didn't even know how to negotiate. I didn't have to negotiate anything in the sciences. It was like, you got hit in the head. I have something for you. It's pretty cut and dry. I go back to that situation so many times, and I think about that moment where I was sitting on the couch and it's pouring rain. And the element of fraud that happened in that transaction actually had to do with an inspection report. The agent falsified a roofing estimate. And we didn't find out until after closing. And he dropped the ball on some other things too, but that was the big one. Um, and as it's raining and pouring, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like this roof needs to be fixed. And he kind of like put us in a really bad position. Um, and at that moment, when I'm doing things now, I think about who I was back then. Because I mean, it's been over a decade at this point, and I think about that and I go, my clients don't know the contract. They don't know what they can fight for. They don't know when to hit the brakes either. And like, you're asking too much. You need to, calm down a little bit. They don't know all the steps. Um, Even when you hand them a piece of paper and say, here's the roadmap that I hand, my buyers and my sellers, like this will keep you on target. They've got life going on. We all have life happening at the same time. They've got kids and pets and maybe a house they're trying to sell, or they're relocating from somewhere else. They've got their job. I draw back every time to that moment and I say, you have to treat them like every day they wake up and need you to just keep them on target. They just need to hear from you and be like, hey, are you good today? Is there anything else you have going on right now that I can help support you on? So that moment to me, I try to bring back myself in it and draw on that experience to make sure that I'm doing what's right for them.
Wow. And the reason why I rephrased the question the second time is because I knew there was like a deeper meaning behind or deeper like story with it. Because like you're not here today because you didn't experience nothing. You're not here
Yeah,
today because you read a lot of books. Even though you could have read a lot of books, what I'm saying is that you have the experience with the education, with the knowledge, and then when you understand people, it's like, well, people just need to be understood, and then you're meeting them where they are at. I think
absolutely.
that's what make you the top performer for social media reach.
Uh-huh.
Did I am I understanding that right, or did I miss that perspective?
Oh no. I have a few it's it's kind of funny. I To this day I take my accolades kind of in stride. Um I get I get awards, I get notice, that I've reached a certain level of success. I try not to hang my hat by it too much. It's kind of a constant game you play where you're like, well, I got to let people know that I'm good. Um, but in my mind, every single transaction I have, even if it goes as smooth as possible, I go back and wonder if I should have done something else or done something better. I kind of do a debriefing on everything that I've done. I'm like, what else could I have brought to the table that time? So, yeah, I've worked very hard to get to where I am, and I do enjoy the success that I've had, and it means a lot to me. Um, but I take it as humble as possible because there's always another transaction that you need to be equally as invested in that's coming up that is going to have its hurdles.
That is true. That is true. That there's a saying that goes with every success, there are countless amount of failures that someone has experienced. When you're reading the contract, like I mentioned earlier, I was doing real estate wholesaling. The
Hmm.
contracts wasn't that in depth. Like it was like maybe 1 or 2 pages. But then when you're buying homes in real estate, the pages are 17, 20, however many. There's a lot of different pages.
It's thick.
It's very thick. But you go through page by page by page by page by page. But just like in order for you to read a book, you have to go through page by page by page by page by page. Just like when you're accomplishing your success, you have to go through failure, through failure, through failure, through failure, through failure, and then eventually turn into knowledge because it's something that you are experiencing. People say that you should be educated. I definitely agree. In addition to that, with the education that you're receiving, you should go try what you're learning
Hmm.
because it's different. It's different.
It's
Anybody
very
can
different.
read.
It's very
But
different.
so what was your big what was the transaction that really taught you more about okay, this is not as easy. Let me take my time. Let me read the contract. Let me break it down so that way my client understand everything that's going on. Have you ever had a transaction that fell apart because you didn't do the small details?
I have been very lucky to have some almosts. Um, I don't want to jinx myself by saying that
Knock on
I
some wood.
haven't
Knock on
had
some wood.
I've been knocking on everything at this point. Um, I have been very fortunate, and it may not always be the case, but I do think back to one situation that it bothers me to this day, and I don't know that I'll ever get over it. But I had new buyers; they loved a certain area of Tampa, and the homes there are just 100 years old, and they are problematic. I don't know a single 100-year-old that doesn't have issues. Homes, especially. And so you have to approach this in a completely different way. And I live in Wesley Chapel, which is like the land of new construction. If it's more than 20 years old, people are like, what's that? So 100 years old, it's got some history. But they loved that area. They wanted this house. And there was a stipulation on it that discussed that money was going to be held in escrow in order for a few permits to get closed out. And we signed off on everything. The money was in escrow. Like we did everything by the book. Never in a million years did we think that the person would just decide to disappear and not try to close out these permits. And when we did our research, we found out what had been hiding, that was going to end up being a lot more complicated than we thought. The good news to it is that when they did default on their end of that, the money that was in escrow did end up going to my clients, and I was able to protect them that way. But the headaches that followed took months. And if I could have gone back 100 times over, I've said this, I would have just told them to pull out. Like, we're done. We're good. Like, you got to fix this before any of this happens. Um, but you're young and you're excited and you're hopeful and you find what you think is the perfect house for you, and they went for it. And I don't fault them for that. I don't fault anybody but the person who was ultimately responsible for, the work that he should have done. So that one is a constant thorn in my side.
Well, when I did a podcast a couple of years ago, and I forgot who I did it with, but nonetheless, they explained the difference between a wound and a scar. A
Mm,
wound hurts. Like if you ride on a bike and you scrape your knee, you can see the white meat on your knee or your leg or anything of that nature. And then it start bleeding. And then you go shower, you go put alcohol on it, and then it really start to burn. Over time, that wound becomes a scar. It's
hmm.
not peeling anymore. It's not bleeding anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. But you will always remember the scar. You will
Yeah.
always remember the thorn. You will always remember the failure because you have to really learn the business. You have to learn what you're doing. People are afraid to fail, but Amy, it doesn't seem like you're afraid to fail. It seems like you are a risk taker willing to learn how to become a better realtor. Because you're always debriefing, you're always reflecting. But when you're reflecting, are you preparing for the next person or next client that you're going to serve? Or you're reflecting because you always want to get better?
Well, to clarify, I'm scared to death of failure, um, but in a good way, in a motivating way, right? So I think you can be scared of failure, and it paralyzes you, and I think you could be scared of failure and it drives you. So for me, failure is not growing. Failure is not getting better. Failure is not learning. Failure is um, being stagnant and just accepting the low bar, the status quo. That to me is a failure. And I recognize that in how driven I am, that there's just never a good enough. Um, but I think you have to be willing to accept failure and be afraid of it at the same time. Otherwise, you're just treading water and you will get nothing out of it. I like to reflect on everything I've gone about as a mother, as a wife, as a professional. And what drives me is how can I fix it? How can I get better? I would say that I fail every day at something. I mean, you could be in the car and just have your moment and, you miss a turn or whatever it might be. But I think you have to just embrace every single part of it and figure out how to turn it around and make it better. For me, it's also about going back to the client I served and maintaining that relationship and saying, you know what? Uh, I'll give you an example. This was a few years ago. I had a client, they bought a house, and we go to do the final walkthrough. And I'll never forget this. It's early. And I'm looking in the kitchen and I'm like, something is different about this kitchen. And I'm racking my brain. And I finally turn around and I'm like, the entire fridge is gone. The seller took the fridge. So I'm on the phone with the agent and I'm like, hey, I need you to call me back. I need you to call me back. I'm getting nowhere. I call my clients and I'm like, hey, we're still going to do final walkthrough, but I got to figure something out because they definitely took the fridge. Even though that happened and it was completely out of my control, I took ownership of it as though it was my failure, right? Maybe I should have reached out to the agent and said, hey, per the contract, the following things stay. We're going to do our final walkthrough on this date. Just wanted to confirm all of this with you. It should be common sense. It's in page one, paragraph one of the contract, but I've had crazier stuff happen. It's not the first thing that's gone missing. But that in my mind was how can I prepare for the next time? But then also, my clients ended up getting a credit for that missing appliance. And the first thing I did was I followed up with them the next day. Hey, were you guys able to make it to, I think it was Lowe's, and get an appliance? When is it going to be delivered? Do you need anything until then? Do you need a dry ice contact or like, are you going out to dinner tonight? Anything I could to follow up and make sure that they were still taken care of. A lot of agents fail at follow up. And I, to this day, have people who have bought and sold homes with me. And I go back and I look at who their prior agent was. And I ask, well, why didn't you work with them again? And I can't tell you the number of times they tell me, haven't talked to them in years. My relationships with people are never ending unless they choose to end it. I will keep following up. I just want to see how you are. I don't want anything out of it. You can stay in that house for the rest of your natural life, but I do want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure you're happy. I want to make sure that if something changed in your life, that you changed your homestead exemptions. I want to make sure that you're writing off the things you can on your taxes if I know about something. I have people who've bought investment properties. If I see that law has changed for renters and landlords, I send it over to them. And that creates the difference where even if the transaction was perfect, I'm still looking for a way to make it better.
And that's one thing that I'm recently learning and discovering because I did a podcast with a guy named Dave Friedman, and he's a franchise owner of the Red Box Plus, and he also worked
Mm,
at the Land Rover. Nonetheless, when I was speaking to him, he's very strategic on. He say, what did he say? He said 44% of people are going to bring referrals. And he was
hmm
like, as he was explaining, I'm like, how do you even know that? He said, you want to see? He let me come on his side because my wife was about to buy a car. So he let me come on his side and he showed me his database. Amy, when I looked at that, I didn't even know what to say.
Yeah,
But now, like really being in business and having a better understanding of people, it's like, well, you have to stay top of mind. If you're not leading with value, people are going to forget you. And
100%.
that's when I thought about, oh, you have to be strategic and consistent.
hmm
Consistent and strategic. For you to be the top real estate agent in Wesley Chapel or Pasco County, there's some things that you have to go through to get to the top.
hmm
Consistency, hard work, effort, determination, and a system. It seems like you're very systematic when it comes to helping your clients. Did I get that right?
Yeah. And I think that's where you can see the bridge between what I do now and what I did back then. Because the science is all about a plan, a strategy. You have a hypothesis, you have to do experiments. Those experiments have to have protocols. You have to collect that data, and that data has to translate into a result. And that's a methodology that has been around for hundreds of years prior to me ever trying it out. And I think the same thing has to apply to your relationships. And I think for me, I remember my husband saying this to me years ago. He said, I think it's very interesting when you talk about people, you refer to them as your friend. It's like, even if, you know, they're not someone we hang out with regularly, you automatically default they're your friend. You don't refer to them as your client. You don't refer to them as, this person. And I said, well, I don't think about the transaction. I don't think about them as a client. I think about them as an extension of my network of people around me. And I think it's great to have a CRM. I think it's great to have follow up. I think it's great to be strategic about it. I tend to lean more on the authentic, and I try to get away from doing things that make it strategic. I think there's an element to that, and maybe that in itself is a strategy, right? But I don't ever want to come out as, I want your business, because maybe you're just a great person and we never do business together, but I still got something out of that. I want to come across as, if you have a need, I might have a solution or an answer. And if later on that brings me your business and I've earned that trust and respect from you, that's amazing. And if it never does and you go with someone else, I also wish you the best. Like, I'm still going to do business regardless. Um, and that to me is, I guess, maybe a piece of my belief system coming out. You have to give to others and be a little bit selfless and try to be charitable, and expect nothing in return.
Wow. I definitely agree. And I do want to bring this back up because you brought him up twice. You said your husband and then your daughter. Your
hmm
daughter has a title. Was it something? Hold on, don't tell me. Hold on. Don't tell me. I just saw it right there. Mom's executive administrator assistant. Did I get that right?
Uh-huh.
So what
Yeah.
is so you work a lot with your family and your daughter, which is I'm sorry, with your husband and your daughter, and which is a family dynamic.
hmm
Family is really important to you,
Huge.
and so
Huge.
when you work with your clients, they're a part of your family now.
Absolutely. And you look at your own family and you think, what do I want to be able to do for my child? What life do I want my family and I to have, my husband and I to have? Or what investment do I want my husband and I to have? And how is that going to look? And I think if you can model things in that way, then you're always going to treat people as though they're in your home. Um, they are a piece of this, and that extension goes on for as long as you want it to. My my daughter is 9 now. She recently turned 9, and I don't think she had any intention when I started this that she was going to be as much of a part of it as she's become. But um, she's really funny. She'll go on inspections, and because she's lower to the ground, she finds stuff and points things out. And she has opinions on things now, and likes and dislikes. And I really appreciate the fact that she's getting to learn so much from what I'm doing and getting to see that. Um, my husband is in a completely different field, but he still supports what I do. And if I have an open house, he's the one putting the signs up, maybe a little reluctantly, but he still does it. Um, but having them involved is fantastic, and I think that translates as well because I do want people to know like this isn't something that I wouldn't just have for myself. I would make sure that if I'm going to do this for you, I would do it for me. If I would do it for me, I would make sure that I'm giving you the same experience.
Now that explains because you remember your first experience from when you had your home and when you bought your home, went through the process. You didn't read the contract, you didn't even understand the contract. Nonetheless, like this is where the care comes from. You're understanding people and you're there for people because you're meeting them where you used to be. So I want to
Hmm.
go off script right quick for a moment. So you are one of the top performers in Pasco County in the real estate. So let's just say I'm a new realtor who just got my license, just for the scenario. And I come to you, Amy, and say, "Hey, Amy, I want to get into real estate. I just got my license. What are 3 steps that I need to do in order for me to be one of the top performers in Pasco County?"
That's a great question. The first thing that I did, which helped define myself in this profession, was I branded myself. And you can't brand yourself if you don't know what you bring to the table and who you are. So the first few weeks that I sat at my brokerage, just having a license, which, great, but like you said, to your credit, you read that book. I can tell you that book means nothing. Getting your license is, you know, um, the book just basically tells you how not to get in trouble. And then some people are just like, I'll try it anyway. But the the first thing I feel like you need to do is you need to understand who you are in this business because there's 100 different avenues you could take. I know agents who love working foreclosures. And to me, I'm like, I don't need that kind of a headache in my world. I know agents who are strictly military and relocation services. And I know agents who love working with investors and they love that kind of hustle. They understand what a flip is, how to get that ROI out of it, et cetera. Um, so even if you plan on being just strictly residential and letting the dice roll and figure it out as you go, you still need to define yourself and create that branding. So my advice would be sit down and figure out what it is that you bring to the table for your clients because you might get asked. I haven't been asked often, but I have been asked a few times, well, why you? And you have to have a legitimate answer because they can immediately sniff out when you're not authentic or when you really just don't have an answer or when you're just feeding them lip service. I'd say the second thing that you need to do is you need to live up to whatever it is that you branded. And I created my tagline, so to speak, was exceptional living starts here. And that to me was I wanted to give exceptional service. I wanted you to have a great experience. I wanted to find you the home that you love. Um, and like I said, I am very heavy with my follow up. If I have a relationship with that person and they want to continue it on, that's a relationship that lasts for, as long as it can go. Um, and then the third thing you need to do is figure out how to deliver that. So, how do you give them whatever it is that you're saying, you're branding yourself as? And for me, being an academic by nature, I became the expert. I'll never say I know everything, but I know a lot and I have worked very hard. I have seven now additional certifications slash designations. Um, I'm not saying you have to go out and do that, but you can. It never hurts. I have my broker's license, so I went out and did the harder course after I did the first one. Um, I am constantly reading up on the news. I've learned about mortgages from mortgage professionals. I've learned about appraisals through appraisers. I have sat down with inspectors. I have sat down with general contractors and HVAC people and like teach me as much as I can. That to me has provided who I am in here. If you want the expert, I got you. Um, but if you want to know, is this going to, rent for a certain amount so you can max out in 5 years and resell it? I may not be your girl.
That sounds like a lot of self-discovery that you have experienced.
Yeah.
Because in 2022, I read 22 different books about real estate.
Mm.
In 18 months, I only closed one deal. So I don't know if it was the information or my implementation, but the fact that you're willing to learn and continue to be a student. A lot of people say, well, since Amy's already the top realtor, I don't have to learn that much. I don't have to educate myself. Well, in reality, there's a price to pay to be at the top. And people don't see the price that you pay every single day, every single moment, every single chance that you have to better yourself. So you're saying I have to find a way to brand myself, have to
Hmm.
find a way to stand out, and then have to find a way to what was the last one to
Implement it. How are you going to do
implement
it?
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got to say it, you got to live up to it, and you got to find a way to do it. And when, for me, the implementation came out of social media. And like I said, I never expect anything back from it. It just, to me, it's natural and it free flows. And again, that academic side kind of comes out where when you're in graduate school, they make you teach. And so I taught in the sciences for a number of years. And it again, it's like a similar kind of venue where you're teaching people who come in with limited to no knowledge of the subject, and you've got to get them to the point where they become the subject expert, or at least a B or better, let's hope, for their grades. I started teaching essentially on social media and like things like in Florida, we have CDDs. That is unheard of where I lived in Philly. No one ever knew what that was. And to this day, I mean, I still answer questions. I would say every week, what is a CDD? Why is the fee going up? How does that work? Who do I talk to? Um, HOAs and how they work, community boards. I will never say that I'm an attorney by any means. I am not, but general real estate law and contractual things that I've learned about. I started putting out that information and saying, like, hey, if you want to know about this, I can give you more information and becoming that ultimate resource. And that is what set me apart. So now when people out there have a question, guess who they tend to come to? They tend to
Yeah.
come to me for the answer. Yeah. So I'm providing a
Mm.
service, I'm providing value, and I do it authentically, again, in a way that I never am expecting anything in return. I post for the sake of posting. I post because I am a homeowner too, and I want what's best for my family, and I want what's best for your family. So you should know this too. And it does come back to me tenfold.
Over the years, I started to understand the importance of delivering value. I read a couple books. It was called The Go Giver. You ever read that book, The Go Giver?
No.
What it explains about how giving and not expecting nothing in return. And like there's a go giver, the first copy, then the marriage, then the leadership, then the influence, and then the seller, and then it's like the go giver. I don't know what it's called, but it's like a go giver brand or something like that.
Okay.
Nonetheless, as I was reading it, it made me understand that like first you have to understand what you're looking for. And then when you understand what you're looking for, you have to keep finding it because you never know what you're gonna locate. Give you a prime
Yeah.
example. With podcasting, people just see people having a conversation or someone just recording, producing podcasts or content creation and so on and so forth. Where in reality, yes, you're having a conversation, but now you got to think about the cameras, you got to think about the lights, you got to think about the microphone, you got to think about the editing, you got to think about the scheduling, you got to think about the posting, you got to think about the consistency. There's so
Hmm.
many different details that goes in between it that a lot of people often missed it because they give up too quickly. They stop doing real estate, they stop doing podcasts, they stop showing up. But for you to be the top performer in real estate, you have to show up consistently.
Yeah. Every day. There's never a moment where And people joke about it. I don't think there's any benefit or flex to saying like, hey, I was in the middle of labor and I still had my laptop on making sure your contract got through. I don't find that to be a flex at all. I think that's a problem with your systems if you can't have a moment. But I do think that you are on call every day and your systems have to support you in that so that you're not literally on call every day. Um, but yeah, there's an element to it where you're kind of always on and you have to be that person on and off the job. And I tend to see people that kind of break that mold where they're one person on and one person off. You got to be consistent with who you are. That's where that branding comes from. You've literally got to be that person in order to deliver it and then, know how. I think one of the failures of people in real estate have been agents who are not truthful or transparent about how hard it is. This is a profession that has a 80 something percent fail rate in the first licensure cycle, which is anywhere from 18 to 24 months. 87% fail rate. On top of that, within the first 5 years of a business cycle, your first 1 to 3 are the most vital. So there is no, it just happens that quickly and then you can slack off. You have to be consistent every day. You've got to put in that effort every day. You've got calls to make or you've got follow-ups to do. You've got cards to send out. Literally right before I jumped on this call, I was finishing up an addendum to move a closing date up and was back and forth, with the other agent on this. So it is demanding. And I think there's a misconception from the people who get into real estate because they've been sold that it's so easy. Whether it be TV shows, whether it be just other agents, they don't see the grind behind it. And I think there's a misconception also on the consumer's part that this is just simple because you still hear it from people. I'll post something and I get in the comments, all you do is, send things to electronically sign. And I'm like, I wish that was the case. I wish if I could do what I do just by being like, here, sign this and click off on it. Heck, I would be in such a better mood every day. My liver would appreciate the lack of ibuprofen I have to feed it some days. You know, it's one of the things that I also have tried to do, especially on my social media, is like, listen, I had a transaction that took 4 months. And I don't just mean it was on the market for that long. Like it took 4 months from contract to close because we were going through hoops with the VA to get an assumption done and all these other things. And I posted about it. And I post about it in a vague way to respect everybody's privacy. But you need to know that I had well over 4 months of work, at least. I think I counted some 800 something emails between parties. I don't even want to look at how many text messages back and forth, hours of my time. And that's okay, because you know what? Two amazing military families, one got to sell and move on, and one now lives down the street from me. And that's fantastic. Worth every single text message and late night call. But we do a disservice by not showing people the failures and not showing people the hard moments, because then they really don't know what they're getting into.
And I can attest to that. You say 80% fail within the first 5 years. Yeah, I'm
I think
definitely
it's higher than 80%. I really think, I mean, the numbers are different all the time, but I think
right.
the last time I looked at it, it was something like 84, 87%. And then I remember last year when the market really started to get rough, and interest rates were super high, there was some numbers floating around that like some 90% of agents, just general real estate agents all over the country, did like less than X amount of transactions. I mean, not even livable wage level amount of transactions. And you think about that, and in one moment you go, wow, I'm doing great. Congratulations. And in the next moment, I feel like you should be watching your back going, that could end at any time. And I could be part of that if I don't continue to strive to get better and manage my business. Your business is people. You gotta be into the people.
I was about to say early because you just said business is people. So I'm in school for business management right now, and then I go to like different masterminds. I'm in another community for for veterans entrepreneurs called Action Zone, and then I go to like different programs to learn more about business and understand business, the language of business, and so on and so forth. It's the continuous education because you said earlier that you are researching your market and you're studying your market. You are looking at the updates, making sure you're up to date with everything. So that way, when you come across new information, you can send it to your family, and so that way your family can start to really understand more about the real estate market. What is the average median price? Is it median price in Pasco County, or is it average median price?
So you can run average and median. I tend to keep it super local and stick to Wesley Chapel. I do business outside of Wesley Chapel, but I'll be the first person to say like I don't know that area as well. So this presents, some challenges, or let me do my homework on this area so that I'm, prepared to send you there. Um, the median and average home prices are kind of spectacular when you look at them over time. I I keep a spreadsheet that has gone out 10 years now just because I was curious. So I went back to 2015 and ran it through 2025. And if you, if you bought a house in 2015 in Wesley Chapel and held on to that, congratulations, because you made over 200% on your initial investment. I mean, it's wild. The prices, especially during the short boom periods, that have happened here, have been kind of incredible. And this is an area that's just going to continue to grow, especially that 33545 area. That village of Pasadena Hills is starting to really expand. Um, but yeah, I mean, you gotta know your stuff, and maybe the academic side of me, it's a little easier for me to run my data and run my numbers and do all of that. But I've also taught a ton of agents how to do it themselves. Now, whether they choose to go and use that, that's on them. But I find it so empowering to be able to say to somebody, and I tell my clients this a lot of times, I'm like, I don't want to be the person at the steering wheel. Like, you should be the driver. I'll be your GPS. I'll make sure you take the right turns at the right time. And I'll get you around the traffic zone. If something comes up, we'll go on that detour. But ultimately, the only way for you to drive that car is to be empowered and informed. And so the more educated my clients are, the better and more comfortable the decisions they make are, and they steer that car in the direction they want to go. And I'm just there to make sure we don't crash.
Based off the lessons that you learned from not reading your contract, for not understanding what you're getting yourself into when you bought your first house, from not really being confident enough to say, I know what I'm doing when I have this first house. You look at everyone and who's the first time home buyer, or they bought their house for the second time, you always see yourself within them. And this is like, now I based off me communicating with you over the last hour, I hear how much you care about people, how much you are really focused on the value that you're delivering. Because if you're empowered to make your own decisions, then Amy is like a resource. Like, hey, Amy, I'm stuck at this point. I'm stuck in this situation. What do I do? And based on your experience and expertise, you're gonna guide them. And it's like not from a book, even though the books are great, but it's from your experience and everything that you have been through over the years.
Yeah, the books are great, but the books aren't people. It's very easy to go back to the books when you're in the sciences because literally this is textbook. This is how we fix a broken leg, or whatever it is. When it comes to this, I mean, in this market alone, you have to think about in Wesley Chapel area, I'll say, we have people who've lived here their whole lives. We have people who have only been here for the past 5 or 6 years. We have people that have only been here for a few years. Just those three scenarios are three very different homeowners. You've got people who've been locked in for a long time. You've got people who got in here before the boom, and you've got people who came in during the boom. So someone who has a ton of equity and has seen this area grow, someone who maybe got in right before it started to go crazy, and someone who might be on the brink of equity or equity short in their home because they bought during the high. All those people who bought during the high are a totally different seller or buyer on their next time around. But all three are happening simultaneously. At the same time, you've got people who want to downsize. You've got people whose families are growing and need to upsize. You have a different situation every single time. Every family, every time you walk into someone's situation, there's no textbook anymore. There's general guidelines, but there is no textbook. And that can happen within the same couple, even. My husband and I are totally different people when it comes to a lot of things. Our core is the same, but our methods are different. Um, the next time we go to buy a home, he's already said, he's like, just show me where we're moving. Like, just show me where we live next, you know? Um, but yeah, it's about the people. It's every time it's about the people. And if it's not, if it's ever about you, then you're doing it wrong. I
And
would
your
tell anybody
slogan
that.
and your slogan is exceptional living starts here.
Mhm.
I had to write
It
that one
starts
down.
with
That was a
me
good one.
because I want to live. I want to live my best. I came from a lot of nothing. Um, I came from a very hard and difficult life, and I look at where I am now and what I've built now, and I'm so incredibly grateful for all of it. But none of that would have happened if I didn't care about people enough to want to bring them up with me. I can't leave them behind. I can't do what was done to me. I need you to do well too for me to do well. So when my clients do well, it does well for me. When my community does well, it does well for me. When the schools in my community do well, they do well for me and my family as well. It's all tied together. Um, and I want to live my best. So I want them to have that too.
Mm. You made me think about when I was in the Marine Corps, when we went on a hike in the boot camp training. If the line gets too far apart, then the people who are in charge, they call drill instructors, they'll say, reach back and touch somebody. That means
Yep.
close the gap. And you're always closing the gap because you're always reaching back and touching somebody. So I have one last segment. It's called Best for Last segment. And I ask 4 questions quickly, and you give like a 30-second response.
Okay.
You ready?
I hope so.
You're going to do great. You're doing great so far. So y'all know you're going to
Okay.
do great for the last segment. So
Awesome.
question number one, what are you grateful for?
Oh my God. I'm grateful for God. I'm grateful for all he has done and given and taught and tolerated. That's
Won't he
it.
do it?
That's where it comes back. He will
Won't
do
he
it.
do it?
All you gotta do is ask.
All you gotta do is ask and believe. The next question: do you have any regrets?
Um, no, I have no regrets. I only have things I'll do better next time. I leave them in the past. I learn from them and I move on. And I think if you can learn from them, then they're no longer a regret. They're a lesson. Learn your lessons, but don't live with regrets. Regrets means that you didn't get anything out of it. Every failure, you got something out of if you choose to.
That, that's a great perspective. Yeah, I had to let that one process. That's a great perspective. Question number three: what is your biggest lesson while being the top realtor in Wesley Chapel?
Um, Man, it's all about who you know. Um, Again, it comes back to people, but in this case, it's not just your clients. It's inspectors, you know, it's vendors that you know, it's all the pieces together, and it takes a village to do a lot of things, and real estate is one of them. I keep people in close relationships with me as vendors to help my clients, and those relationships continue to grow. But you got to have that support system because you can't be on your own. And that goes for your brokerage too. If you don't have a strong brokerage and support system, if you're out there flying by yourself, it's never going to happen for you.
That is true. That is 100% true. And then last question, what does failure is knowledge mean to you?
I think failure is the number one predictor of success in people. And when I was watching some of your other podcasts that you did, I kept coming back to that and thinking like, well, what really does that mean? And I don't hire people. I'm not in that kind of a job or position. But if I were to hire someone, I really don't care what someone's experience is because I was a new agent at one point too. I don't know that I would ever ask them about their greatest successes. I don't even think it would matter, but I would want to know um, if you've ever failed at something, what did you do next? Because I can tell you, hands down, that is the difference between someone that I want on my team and someone who's not going to make it. You're going to drag someone down. It comes back again to a failure is only what you make it out to be. If you do nothing else with it but wallow in it and feel bad for yourself and act like, you know, this was out of my control, you got to take accountability. You got to own it. You got to look at it and say, what could I have changed to avoid it or make it better or fix it for next time? And then it's no longer a failure, it's a life lesson. That's what
Wow.
that means to me. When you have that knowledge, you're going to be okay.
Amy, you're a natural. You're a natural. How can people find you? How can they work with you? How can they work with the top realtor in the Wesley Chapel?
Well, my social media, I am heavily on Facebook. That seems to be most of my market, but I also try to do things on TikTok. So you can go to smithandassociates.com. You can go to Amy Rivera Realtor on Facebook and TikTok. Um, for some reason, I never took off on the whole IG thing. I tried, but I like to scroll through, but I don't do much on it. And then they can always email or call me. I am happy to answer. I will answer my phone. I will talk you through it.
This has been great. Wow,
This
Amy,
has been great. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you for coming on again. I'm speechless because one of your expertise, two because of your humanity, and three because of the family aspect that you have for everybody. Amy, again, I do appreciate you for coming on to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. So, how was your experience by being on the podcast?
Easy, great, easy to follow, conversational. I think you always walk in with a little bit of intimidation, wanting to have like a super poignant, wonderful answer. And sometimes you're just ready to trip over your own tongue. But I I really enjoy someone who can just bring you into that conversation. And I think your questions were really integral to getting out the information that you're looking for, which kind of hits your whole purpose for this. And not everybody can do that. I myself included, I'd be trailing off in 100 directions. So I really like that we got to focus on it. I like that you brought the question into it in multiple ways throughout this. And I think stuff like this is so incredibly useful for people, like I was saying, because there's just such a artificial element out there where people don't get to hear the truth or they're struggling and they need that one moment that tells you, no, you just need to stick with it a little longer. You need to grind a little harder. That's what they need. So I love it. I had a great time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Last question for someone who's hesitant to come on to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. What is one piece of advice that you can give them to prepare for it?
Get over it. Um, Honestly, it's I truly do come back to one of the things I said is like fear can either be a motivator or it can paralyze you. And if you're going to live it out paralyzing you, it doesn't matter what the context is, you will never get further than where you are currently standing. You have got to take that extra step and that extra step. And to anybody who is being hesitant about coming on, I just encourage you to take that next step. It is a great experience to be able to walk away and say, number one, I had a great time. Number two, I feel like I offered somebody a piece of me that they would never have had the opportunity to get. And number three, I got to take away something from it too, because just hearing a lot of this actually makes me want to go and meet with the people that I haven't talked to in a while and recreate those moments with my clients. So I I encourage you to not wallow in it, to take the step forward and do it.